Hey everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to episode 183 of the I Suck at Jiu Jitsu show. So today I've got an interview for you guys, and we are going to start doing interviews consistently on Tuesdays. I know I told you guys I wasn't going to commit to doing interviews every Tuesday, and I was just going to do every other Tuesday. And then one of my students at when we were at Payans gave me a suggestion. And he said, hey, you know, there's so many of these interviews you talk about that I've never heard on the show because I don't care about you enough and I don't love you enough to actually just scroll to the bottom and find interviews that would be interesting and helpful for me that you worked really hard on. He didn't say that word for word, but it was something pretty close. And what I decided, what idea he gave me was, what if you do a repost every once in a while of some old interviews? And so we're going to do that kind of every other week on Tuesdays, but then we're going to release a new interview on the opposite weeks. And so today is a brand new interview with Chris Paynes. We really focus a lot on what coaches could be doing better in jiu-jitsu to produce better grapplers and to produce grapplers that understand jiu-jitsu better. And so that's really our focus on that. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy this episode. And so, yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this episode. All right. Yes, that is. Cool. Yep, we're all set. Chris, how are you doing?
Josh, I'm so glad to be back, man.
Man, I'm glad you're back. First, obviously the new studio isn't set up perfectly yet, but I'm glad.
It's like a nightclub in here, man. Like the black walls when I walked in, I was like, dude, all you need is a disco ball now.
It totally so changes things, right?
Yeah.
Versus all the white kind of, I don't know, any little bit of color or any, I don't know, the white has so much bounce with the lights and stuff, just didn't work as well. Somebody gave me, the guy that helped me kind of redo everything, he gave me the idea. He goes, I think you should paint everything black.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know, man. He goes, just pay attention to podcasts that you watch and pay attention to how many of them have black backgrounds, but you don't notice it because you don't notice black. Yeah. And I started watching and I'm like, oh, this guy's right. I really should do this. And I'm glad I went with it.
I did the, I think it's out yet. I need to follow up on it. But I did the Fanatics podcast probably about 2 months ago now. And one of the things that he sent me like a rider to begin with, like requests for how he wants the video to look. And one thing he did say is like, do not have any bright lights behind you, like nothing white or bright, like shining from behind you, like make sure it's facing onto you. I was like, oh, right, okay. So this is something that's important. But I think also with white, any smudges and stuff like that, it makes everything dirty initially, and you think you just look, the quality looks poor straight off the bat. Yeah, there could be blood splattered all over these walls, no one would know.
Yeah, you wouldn't even see it. Luckily, there is blood spattered all over the walls, you know?
That's jiu-jitsu mat set. I'm surprised if there wasn't.
All right, so I thought a good place to start, I was trying to think of it after you and I wasted 2 hours of great jiu-jitsu content just talking at my dad's kitchen table. I thought, man, what should we reiterate? What should we go back to? And so I thought it would be a good place to start with the idea of a Chris Paynes seminar when you go in and you start with your intention. What are we trying to accomplish in this conversation today? And so first, do you have anything that pops into your head? If there was one thing we could accomplish in the conversation.
From this podcast, I'd say, I think it makes me laugh how much we're on the same page sometimes. So I was, getting ready just to come out here, and I was thinking, what are we going to talk about today? And I think the big one is what me and you are so passionate about is the learning process of jiu-jitsu and the evolution of going from the atypical dogmatic approach of just learning closed guard on day one and drilling and going, no, actually, we're going to step away from this. So I think for anyone listening to this and who's interested in what we both do, look at it from that thing I've said about coaching. Like, what are we trying to change about them? We want to change how they view, how they learn, and then go, actually, no, why am I doing it like this? So I think that's a pretty good place to start. Since that's what we love so much.
So as typical, Chris and Josh, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Because my thought was the name of this episode, and obviously I hadn't even discussed it with you, was going to be Do As I Do Now. And I think that is something that you and I, before we ever even met, we started applying that to our jiu-jitsu training and to our coaching. And maybe, we just were two guys that had a little too much freedom, and we're like, let's just start to experiment. Let's start to figure some stuff out. And we both did this, where we started to say, hey, I don't drill anymore. I'm not going to teach my students that way. I don't think about this. I don't do closed guard armbar anymore. I'm not going to teach my students that. And to some people, they heard that, they just turned off this episode. They're like, how dare you not show the closed guard armbar and not shrimp up and down the mats. But actually, our first conversation ever, we're like halfway through, and I just had the thought, I'm like talking to you, and you're giving all kinds of different perspectives on just on the idea of defending everything, right? But then we started to talk a little bit of training method. And I just had the thought, I was like, you know what? I normally don't ask a question I don't know the answer to on the podcast, but I ask you, Chris, what do your warm-ups look like? And you go, I don't do warm-ups. And I had the biggest smile, and I was like, dude, neither do I. And that's the point of it took us about 37 minutes to become friends. But at that point, every episode we've done since then has just been like, oh my gosh, there's somebody else out there that sees these things and goes, hey, these don't help me anymore. Maybe they're not helpful for my students now. And I really think that is going to be a big part of our conversation today.
I think it's like we're stuck. It's easy to get stuck in this bubble kind of thing that you can't kind of break out of, like being stuck in like a paper bag. Like we know what we want to do, but because the dogmatic approach to jiu-jitsu, the way it's always been done, the way it's done everywhere, is so strong. And I'm going to, unfortunately, probably reference our kitchen table conversation a lot, is it's so difficult to take things out of how we normally teach and go, right, actually, you know what, I don't do this, so why the hell am I teaching it? But then you go, A, am I messing up my students by taking this out? B, what am I going to replace it with? Like, essentially, like you said, we were saying earlier, like you're essentially remaking or making anew a martial art, because it doesn't look anything like how we normally learn jiu-jitsu. It'd be like, trying to learn karate or something and going, actually, no, we're not going to do any of the punches or katas that have been in karate. Like, then what are you going to do in its place? Like, have you got any ideas on how to do that? And I think it's maybe a little bit difficult to try and recreate, brand new ideas so far away from the normal approach. But the harder part is, because this is a competitive sport and your gym's I don't say ranking, but infamy is based on how you do in competitions and stuff like that, because everyone wants to compete. Not everyone, but a portion of the gym will want to compete. If you completely mess up your students and they go into a competition and get absolutely trounced, that's on you. Like, you messed up the training. Why couldn't you just stuck to the way it always was? And that's terrifying, because you don't want to, people are paying you to get them good at this sport and to make them so they can accomplish these things. And you're then messing them up because you have these wild and wacky ideas. That's scary as hell. And we were talking this morning about Ryan Hall, and Ryan, he is incredible. His way of, his confidence in teaching this, I don't want to say the buzzword of conceptually, but his new way of showing jiu-jitsu and how he has, the philosophy is so ingrained into the class. It was so refreshing to be like, oh my God, I'm not alone. Same with how you were talking to Steve Kwan at Mental Models. And I think all of us who are really stepping out of this boundary of teaching jiu-jitsu differently, I think we need a way better way of communicating, because we're all out here just like, oh my God, am I alone? Like you said, like, we started talking like, oh my God, I'm not alone.
And it happens with you and I every time we talk. Every time you come out to Granite City and I don't come to England, every single time we have these conversations, and we will both come in with this idea of like, dude, I'm trying something new. And we're almost expecting, I'm almost expecting when I'm telling you this new idea that I'm talking about, this is going to finally be the straw that broke the camel's back, and Chris is just going to stop being my friend anymore. This is just going to be the one thing that he said, you know what, Josh, this is too much. This is a bad call. You're ruining your students, right? But every time that happens, usually we'll talk, I'll explain it to you, you'll explain it to me, and the other one will say, wow, I haven't said it that way, but we've been doing the same thing in our gym. It's kind of a weird thing about you and my jiu-jitsu journey is how similar they have been. Here's a random little story, and this is also a Josh and Chris being evil twins from across the pond. So I have this super fight, and it's in St. Louis, and it's a really big show. I think they have like 500 plus people there. It's just an awesome event, and I get to be the main event. And right before the event starts, the announcer of the event says, "Hey, Josh, what how do you tend to be announced?" He goes, "You're a world champion, right?" And I was like, "No, I'm not. So don't say that." I go, "Usually I just say the host of the ISAJJ Jiu-Jitsu show." Yeah. And he goes, "Huh, okay." He's like, "That's really good." He goes, "You're also head nod, right? That's your gym?" And I go, "Yeah, but with tournaments and stuff, I like to be part of my affiliation, usually TAC team." And he kind of looks at me and he goes, "Head nod sounds a lot cooler." And I go, "Okay." I go, "Dude, I trust you." I go, "I'll do the jiu-jitsu, you do the announcing." And he goes, "Perfect." So he takes it upon himself to give me a nickname as I'm walking out. And so there have been different head nod guys competing on the card. And you've taught at Head Nod. It's a ragtag crew of people. You know who you're getting.
Granite City.
It's Granite City, right? And there's no other way to explain it than it's Granite City. But you kind of start to get the vibe of, okay, this is this team. And so I'm in my walkout, and he says, "Now announcing the diabolical leader of the Head Nod squad." And as soon as I heard that, I thought, so really, I'm just the American version of Chris the Villain Paints, huh? You really hit me with that. Like, I don't feel like I'm a very diabolical person, but when you look at the team that I have, maybe I am, And so that was just another totally random note. But
as soon as I got here into St. Louis, I was like, that's my more superior, handsome brother right there. we were talking about this, so a drill that Josh has been, a teaching method called Designated Winner that you talked about on the Mental Models podcast. And weirdly enough, it's how I've been, I've been trying to teach the exact same way for about, the last 2 years. And any of my students who happen to maybe listen to this will vouch for it, is this idea that I call it, I want you to drill, but one person's going to win. So the designated, without you going to spar with a designated winner. And it's so funny that we've hit the same term, but I think, if I have to ever reference it ever again, I'm just going to, I got this from Josh McKinney, and it's your buzzword now. But it's the same, we're both, you say you've been doing it for about a good couple of years, and I've been doing the exact same. We just both seem to be converging on these same ideas of coaching, but not, maybe subconsciously picking it up from other people, but just sitting down, just going, how can I do this better?
And that is what I notice about, there's not even a term for people that like to teach in the way that you or I teach, or just, there are a lot of people like that I will run into, and I'll go, oh, this guy, he's not showing 3 techniques and then roll live. His class is different than that. And, for instance, I taught at this camp, and a guy, he's one of the kind of leaders on my affiliation. His name's Mark Vives. He's a Chicago guy. He's been around forever. And I teach Designated Winner as one of my sessions. And as soon as I teach that, he's like, I'm walking off the mat, and Mark's going, hey, we do something like this at my gym. We just don't have a name for it. And then what was even cooler was how quickly him at, I want to say he's late 40s, and he's been teaching jiu-jitsu longer than I've been alive. And for some punk kid to walk in and teach and put a name on this method, he starts using that name immediately. And I was like, oh, there's a free thinker. He just no threat at all, just like, oh, I like this idea. I'm using this. And he implemented it in the seminar 30 minutes after mine. And he implemented some of the ideas, some of the concepts that I taught. He's like, so if you're trying to do what Josh was teaching, this is how we would have to fight against it. And it was just, to me, it was this big click that like, there are guys out there that are so open-minded in the jiu-jitsu space that are saying, and usually it's the competitive guys. It's the guys that say, hey, I want to win. I want my guys to win. I will leave no stone unturned, and I will try that. But there is no term for that person. There is no separation between this is a traditional teacher and this is a non-traditional teacher.
Kind of goes back, as you're saying this, just the same thing that I said earlier, is that idea of a coach compared to a professor. And I'd say it's you want a word for it, it's coach. Like, and so there's and I'm repeating myself to Josh, but there's a brilliant.
You can repeat yourself to me as many times you need, because I need to learn it.
There's a really brilliant. I highly recommend if you can get his books. There's 3. There's Training for Warriors, Warrior Cardio, and Ultimate Warrior Fitness or something, by a guy called Martin Rooney. I think they're out of print now, but you might be able to pick them up on Google Books or something. But Warrior Cardio is like his opus. And when I was first competing and trying to get fit for jiu-jitsu, this was the guy to follow. He was like the S&C coach for like Jim Miller, Frankie Edgar, a bunch of UFC guys, who were known for their cardio. And he released a book and an audiobook. It's on Audible, called Coach to Coach. And it's, quite a hammy, story about an American football coach who is trying to become better, and as a a better coach who's kind of like introducing him to these better teaching practices. And it's a way of kind of like getting the message across. But I highly recommend if you can find Coach to Coach by Martin Rooney. And one of the parts of it was, what is the history of the word? Well, why are we called a coach? And I'm not sure that the entire logic is there of this is why we are called coaches, but I enjoy it and I like it, and it's really changed how I teach. And this history of the word coach is there was I think it's Hungarian village or town called Coach, like KOC, pretty sure it's KOC, and they were known for making these wagons, these horse-drawn wagons that could carry things around and people around, and they were called coaches. You think of like a modern coach, like a large bus that takes people from one place to another. So I like the idea that, said in this audiobook, a coach is someone who gets someone when they want to be, when they cannot get there themselves. And so you're not then a fountain of knowledge. You're not a professor. You're not someone who's doing a lecture and expecting people to copy you. You're someone who cares about the people who come to you, and they have a place they want to be. They may not know it fully themselves. It's your job to also help them figure that out. But you get them there with whatever tools are needed. I think that idea of, I want what's best for them. I'm not in this for myself. Like, I'm sure there's an element of selfishness. I want to make people better, but by and large, I want to see them succeed. And so whatever tools I need to make them succeed. So if I see someone doing something in a better way than what I'm doing, well, that makes more sense for me. That's a new tool. Mm-hmm. My learning is based on increasing my toolbox to then improve my students. So it's not I'm not picking things up to go, oh wow, that's going to make me better. It's like, no, that's going to make my understanding of this better to help this person, to help this guy, this girl. Exactly. So you say that you go to the, those people, those free thinkers. I say they're not professors, they're coaches. They're people who care about their athletes and want to see them succeed in whatever way they need to make them succeed. And you can tell those people. You can tell them, the ones that just want to be heard, who want to sit in a room and have people fawning over them, or and it's hard on a seminar in that you're in a place where you don't know necessarily many or any of the people in the room, but you've quickly got to read it and think, right, why am I here? Like, what do you want? Where do you want to be? How in the 2 or 3 hours that I have can I get you there? And I'm gonna, like you said, it's easy to have a script and go, right, I'm just gonna teach this list of techniques. Or do you freewheel it and go, right, you can read the room? Like, some people are like not getting one thing, like, okay, well, I'm going to adjust the seminar now because I need to get you to this end goal. And you said, right, the jump from this podcast is, what's the purpose? And that purpose is, again, like, well, what do you guys want? Like, why am I here? And, you know, from what I've read about the room already and why you've kind of booked me is you want this. Okay, cool. This is our purpose then. This is why I'm here and what we're trying to reach by the end of today. Not that, oh, you know, here's a bunch of entries into butterfly that I do and a guillotine. Cool. I may never use this. Like, you know, it's a really interesting way of then changing how you as a teacher, because it's weird that you mentioned one of your purple belts earlier, is I would take, what's the criteria for being a black belt in general? Be a badass. Like, be someone who can just kick the fuck out of someone. Yeah, what's the criteria for being a coach? Entirely different. Mm-hmm. So why does a black belt be the person who coaches? You know, what is what's the criteria? You know, how are these two things even interlinked? You know, you don't book a black belt because, you know, for a seminar because they're an ass kicker. You book them because you want to be able to explain jiu-jitsu. You want to become better. I would rather take a good purple belt who can explain jiu-jitsu and cares about someone else's improvement over a black belt killer. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we book black belt killers because they're the ones with the biggest profile. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, if you can kill people, you know, on the big stage, you can teach me how to kill people. Not the same thing. Like, nowhere near the same thing.
And pretty much when you know, and this isn't, you know, this is a bit more of a basic rule of thumb. This isn't always like this. I have gotten around really high level guys that do actually understand jiu-jitsu, but very few of them. Most of the time, the high level guys are someone who I would say learns through the athletic lens of jiu-jitsu. Get your reps, find simple things to do them a lot, put them into a strategy even for competition. You know, you don't have to be the best guard player in the world to be a guy that out wrestles everybody and just stays on top and wins matches, right? And so then if we expect someone to then go from that to where they've always been the athlete, they've always had a good coach, to then snap your fingers, you can coach. Yeah. It just doesn't seem to work that way. You really do have to have people that have an understanding. And generally, you know, at least obviously, again, two generalizations, but generally the guys that got smashed longer and had to figure out an actual intellectual way out of that, have to figure out how to actually not get smashed anymore. Those are the ones that are easier to learn from because they can say, hey, I've made every mistake and then figured out a way out of it. This is how you can also figure out a way out of that mistake.
I think one of the bigger ones as well is someone who coaches beginners more. Like, it's easy when you get higher up to just go, well, you know, I'm just going to teach advanced classes, you guys teach beginners. But I have never shied away from, you know, second someone walks into the room, like, I'm going to explain jiu-jitsu to you. I mean, I did a seminar in the UK just before I came out here, in Cornwall. So literally the southern tip of the UK. And, you know, the room had a black belt in it, apparently one of the best black belts in the area, like a really, really good competitor. The head coach of the gym was a brown belt. There was a good mix of blue belts and white belts on the mats. And then there was a girl who happened to be walking past the gym at this moment in time on the high street, saw through the window there was a martial arts class on and just came in. Like, just go, yeah, I'll try whatever the hell this is. So she had not even done, barely knew what jiu-jitsu was, had never done a class. And now her first experience of jiu-jitsu is a Chris Payne seminar. And I think they kindly enough gave it to her for free, but you know, that's a hell of a spread in the room from black belt all the way to what the hell are we doing in here? Mm-hmm. And having that way of, like, you know, someone who takes the time and thinks, right, I want to see this beginner get better. Like, I want to see you enjoy jiu-jitsu and understand it. That you have to get such a deep understanding because everyone's different. And again, I think that changes the language between an athlete and a coach. An athlete is someone who says, oh, in this situation, I do this. But a coach is someone who says, right, when you're in this situation, you have to understand your body to be able to do this. Mm-hmm. This is your outcome. Figure how your body should do this. And that's how, like, normally is one of those ways that I see black belt language being different, is that it's very easy to fall back into that, well, when I'm here, I do this. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, you're a, you know, 190 pound, 5 foot, 6 foot individual. Cool. I'm not. Mm-hmm. So how am I going to get to that same conclusion? right, we'll have to, and exactly that. They want from you, I need to be here. How are you going to get me there? Different language.
Yeah.
Coach and athlete are completely different languages.
And that makes perfect sense. And I think that in the jiu-jitsu space, there is not a lot of differentiation besides belts. It is, this guy is a black belt. So, new black belt in class today, go ahead and teach for us. Most of those guys, they're like, dude, I've been a student all the way up until black belt. I don't even know how to teach. But again, just like you said, you have a purple belt that's run beginners classes. And I ask that person to teach. They're going to probably be a lot better.
Yeah.
They have gotten to, and when you first start out anything, just the ferocity that you will approach it with, the excitement that you'll approach it with, you'll really care in the beginning. Does this guy actually get better from what I'm teaching? I remember the first time I went to a tournament with my students. I had a gym for 6 months, and I had this crazy realization. I'm coaching a match, and there was something that I knew that my guy, he had been training for 4 months, that I knew he didn't know, and I wanted to tell him. And I had this realization, oh no, all these guys know is what I've taught them. Yeah. I've only ever experienced teaching at my coach's gym where he would give them the big base of knowledge, and then I would give them the cool stuff, right? I would give them the stuff that worked really well for me, and that moment, and it wasn't even like my students did bad. They were pretty much even with everybody else. But that moment was when I said, something's got to change. I can't do this same thing the same way again because it's not going to work. It's not going to work for these guys. And that really was one of the first times I started to change at least my method of teaching. And I stopped repeating what Henner and Huron Gracie on Gracie University said and started saying, well, this is what I actually think about the position. This is how I think you could win in this position. And that difference, that really, for me, that was the start of my coaching journey, was saying, it's not just repeating the same thing. And that's so hard for people to understand because I went to a seminar with Braulio Estima and he showed this triangle finish. And now I feel like I should always explain the triangle exactly the way that he explains it. But the truth is, that's how he sees the triangle. Yeah. That's how or maybe even a lot of coaches, that's how they learned the triangle. That may not be how they actually see it today or how they actually use it. But just like you and I talk about, they'll say this thing where they go, well, this is how I was taught 15 years ago. So in theory, 15 years from now, you will be as good as me at this move. Yeah. And it just doesn't work like that. And then from a coaching perspective, I don't want it to take 15 years. No. 15 years of grind. Yes, it's been fun and I've loved this journey. But if I could do the same things for you in 7.5 years that it took me 15 years to learn, how beneficial is that? And then if you can do that again, if you can do it in 5 years for the next guy, that learning and that coaching is going to compound. And for me, we were talking about this earlier, it's selfish too. I love that I can teach a move and then not talk to certain guys at my gym, knowing or teach this new idea or teach this new goal or whatever skill to develop. And I know that all I have to do is let these guys work on this for 30 minutes and their jiu-jitsu learning has gotten so good that what's going to happen is I'm going to walk over and I'm going to learn something from them. Even though it was my idea that they're trying to dissect and they're trying to look at, they're going to express my idea totally differently. And that only happens if you focus on teaching your students to learn and not focus on teaching your students to, as you and I were talking about earlier, be parrots and just repeat back to you, coach says do this, so coach says right hand here, and so my right hand goes here every time. No, that we could have made that so much better. The reason that your right hand goes here is because it keeps the arm off your head. If you could use your left hand and keep the arm off your head, if you could use distance and keep the arm off your head, if you could do anything and keep the arm off your head, you are still accomplishing that same goal. And unless somebody actually learns how to learn jiu-jitsu, then it won't matter. They won't be able to say, I have all these other tools that I could use to accomplish that same goal.
Well, it creates a bit of cognitive traps, I think, in that. So, I'm not talking bad about him in the slightest. He's a brand new coach in this, but I have a affiliate in Switzerland. So, hey Hitch, if you're watching,
Hitch, he's about to start talking bad about you, just so
Dude,
you know.
dude, no. He knows I love him. So he was, I was saying to him about teaching classes. It's not about showing something new every class or showing, as much as you can. Like, it's easy to fall into that trap of, I show my superiority by showing more, by knowing more. And it's easy to go, right, well, you go to class, you don't really plan ahead. I mean, talking from even experience here when I was brand new and coaching, and you kind of reminded me when you said about you're the person who shows the cool stuff, is that it's easy to go, on the way to class, like, right, what are we going to do today then? I need to show some more triangle setups. What kind of cool stuff can I show? You want to show like flamboyant stuff, you want, or it's almost like a way of bigging yourself up. I'm capable of doing this, and I know all this kind of stuff, and it's, you can drown people in too much information like that instead of just going, right, actually, no. I mean, it was before I came out here, so I've left the gym in the capable hands of my black belts and brown belts and purple belts. I said, you know what, before I come out, if you want to know what to go for the next 2 weeks, just get smoother at what we do. Like, you don't have to show new techniques, just create the right drills, create the right time for them to become smoother at what we're trying to accomplish. You don't have to show them anything new, just give them the right time. And it's one of the other things that I think is what we're talking about with designated winner is that fallacy of, you get better by training with better people. You don't. Like, you just get smashed a lot more. Like, if you want to get better, train with people who are not as good as you, but close, because at least you can still win, but you're given tests, puzzles. And you talk about, cooperative training, to steal from your moment on mental models, is I'm just one person in the room, and there are 30 different people with me, 20 to 30 people at any given time. And they all have different experiences outside jiu-jitsu. They could be doctors, engineers, whatever. And they can bring so much to the table from just what they do. And, what the hell am I doing telling people how to do something when there's a teacher in the room or something like that, or an engineer, someone who can like break things down in such a logical way. And so I like this idea that, here's a puzzle. This is what we're trying to accomplish. Here are the parameters and of the puzzle. Here's some of the tools I'm aware of that can make this puzzle easier. Go and figure it out. Like, teach yourself how to solve this puzzle. I'm going to give you the time and maybe, the odd hints if you need it. But if you can figure out this puzzle on your own, that's much more efficient learning than just doing a drill. And when you've got 30 people in the room all brainstorming together, just sharing ideas and opening up that conversation of, right, okay, in 5-10 minutes time, we're going to start, show your work. How far have we come? And people go, oh, I've been done this. Oh, wow, I didn't even consider that. Let's do this. And then you can go, right, here's some new information, from around the room. We've all brainstormed. Go back and continue with this puzzle. And again, that's such a weird way of like, how can you, we obviously did not learn jiu-jitsu that way.
No, absolutely not.
And it's that, again, that anxiety moment of, this is not the done thing. Like, how we stepped away from what we did so much. And you don't, like you said, just like it took us 10 years, 15 years to get to where we are. I want my students to get there faster than I got here. But is this the right way of doing it? Mm-hmm. And, is the way that we're doing now going to slow them down? Is it going to take them 20 years to get to what took me 10 because I'm doing it entirely differently?
That's their problem, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's not my problem. They're only paying me.
Are you a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu coach looking to level up your skills to take your teaching to the next level? Have you ever felt like something was missing from your perspective when it comes to learning or training Jiu Jitsu? Well, we've got some great news for you. We're excited to promote the 3 Lenses ebook available for free at simplifyingjujitsu.com/3. This amazing resource can help coaches fill in the blanks from their perspective of teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. In this ebook, you'll learn the 3 key lenses that coaches can use to better understand and teach Jiu-Jitsu to their students. These lenses include the scientific, the artistic, and the athletic lens. And what we do is explain how those things even apply to you, how to use them to your advantage, how to identify when a student learns from one of these lenses that maybe you do not teach in or you do not learn in. So if you are ready to take your coaching to the next level, download the 3 Lenses ebook today. Again, it's completely free. It's only available at simplifyingjujitsu.com/3. So don't miss this amazing opportunity to improve your coaching skills and make a bigger impact on your students. Don't forget, it is totally free. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll go ahead and bring it back to Josh to deliver some more jiu-jitsu knowledge to you.
Yeah, and it makes it always so interesting, like listening to the ideas you have. And like I say, it's that watching your white belt competition go, damn, I didn't have enough time to show him everything I needed to show him. Mm-hmm. And so it's find that new way of condensing down the information and going, right, how do I get everything I know into you quicker than it took me to get? And it's interesting how we've both reached this idea of the increased resistance, puzzle solving, self-learning model. Mm-hmm. Right. I'm not even going to teach you. You're going to do it. I'm the director of how this is. I'm the composer of this.
That's the word that I like to use too, especially even when I'm coaching at a tournament. I think of it like that. I am a composer. I'm going to use whatever tools available to help you win this match, right? Whether that means I'm going to help you, maybe we have certain code words that I'm yelling to you to help with the strategy of how we're going to pace this match. Maybe sometimes like a different little composing thing is, like I said, I tend to have a very loud and obnoxious team. It's something I've accepted at this point. I remember there was a point where we left a tournament and I was driving home and I was thinking, I worked 11, 12 years of my life in this same area, building a certain reputation of being this really nice guy that isn't showy, that isn't obnoxious. And then I have my team. And I won't even get into it. I love them, right? Yeah. But they have this ability, even though normally I'm yelling, God, shut up. Every once in a while, a guy needs motivation on the mat. A guy is, the match is got a minute left and the dude is tired and he needs the energy from the team. And as the composer, that's when I go, get loud, get loud, get loud. And sometimes it makes a huge difference in matches. But it's that same idea of, I'm just trying to use whatever tools that I have. And this is kind of something just back to where we were talking about designated winner, what we were talking about today. I actually didn't mention this in the mental models episode, but like that, I think that idea from both of us of the importance of getting to do rounds that you win a lot, right? Doing rounds that that you have a designated winner and you're only getting 20% resistance. That is what it's like for guys like you and I. When we do jiu-jitsu, when we're doing jiu-jitsu against a blue or a purple belt, and this is not to sound cocky or anything, this is just true. We are the designated winner pretty much every time. When you ask most high-level black belts, you don't go into many rounds with any thought that you're going to lose at all, especially when you're training with lower belts. You are kind of looking at it as this blue belt is about 20% of my energy. This purple belt is about 40, 50, 60%, but still I am the designated winner in these rounds. And that is why you and I, in theory, at least in my opinion, why we got away from drilling is because there wasn't a need. We didn't need to get those reps by, okay, don't resist me at all. We could get our reps by going with guys that are really, pretty good, but we're just a lot better than, because we know we're going to win. We know we're going to be able to hit a lot. And what designated winner is basically you get to be the black belt and then the other guy is going to be the blue belt. And you get to hit whatever you want over and over and over. And that's why black belts tend to get better faster than blue belts get better. And so that really is kind of a hack to getting better, is just that training method.
Weirdly, you mentioned it kind of jogged me straight away, is that so in my the last time I was in the States and I got to go visit Fanatics, which if you're on video, repping them right now. At the end of the DVD, I talked about, I'm pretty sure I did, about how to learn. And it's very similar. Again, it makes me giggle how much we kind of hit the same ideas, is that anytime I want to learn something, like say if I've got a new idea in my head, like, okay, I want to go try this, this new technique. The last person I'm ever going to go use it on is my black belts, because they will smash it and it dies. And this, I think, it's funny, this is going to take a hell of a dog leg turn, is I think it's the blue belt problem, is that if I want to learn something, I will go grab the newest person in the room and do it to them, because they're going to give me, there's going to be 1,000 problems with what I want to do, but they're going to give me 2 problems. I'm going to go, damn, didn't think of that, solve it. I'm then going to go to a high white belt, and they're going to give me another 10 problems. I'm going to work with them until those, I'm sparring with them, playing my idea, solve that problem. I'm then going to go to my blue belts, my purple belts. Every time I climb a level, out of those 1,000 initial problems that I didn't know I had with my technique, they're all giving me advanced problems to deal with. Till eventually, I've solved enough of them that when I get back to my black belts, out of the 1,000 problems they could have thrown at me and destroyed my technique, I've solved 990 of them. And now my technique is good. So anything I ever want to do, I start from the beginning. Like, no, I'm not. And that's part of the problem, is usually the people we drill with and then we spar against predominantly are our friends and our peers, someone who we're rivals with. And, you can learn something in class, like learn a new triangle setup or whatever. Oh my God, game changing. You then go and hit that on your friend. It dies and you never use it again. And it's part of the problem, is that I think what kind of holds blue belts back, especially compared to a white belt, is that at white belt, you have no ego. Oh, no, you have an ego, you want to win, but you're getting crushed. The second you get a blue belt, even though you were a white belt 24 hours earlier, you go, I am never losing to a white belt ever again. And fuck them. I am not one of them anymore.
They're not human beings.
No, I have transcended them right now. And it's easy to then have a technique, be shown a technique, and go, it doesn't work, and then go straight back to your A game. And so that's one of the reasons, that's part of the criteria I have from a blue belt getting a purple belt, is it's very easy to have a fight, like you said earlier. You have a single thing that you're good at blue belt, and to then step out of that, what you're good at, and learn more jiu-jitsu is so hard, because you won't allow yourself to learn, because you won't go use it on people who are just about as good as you. You only got a blue belt and then against a high white belt, but you won't allow yourself to build up your technique and learn to new technique, because it's easy just to go, no, I'm not losing to these blue belts and white belts. I'm going to show my superiority. I'm just going to go back to my A game again. And it's one of my favorite things to roll with blue belts, is that they're very good in what they're good at, but second you even diverge ever so slightly from their game, they die. And that's kind of like the criteria I have for someone from blue to purple, is that, do you feel accomplished everywhere? Or are you still stuck in your own little head that you won't allow yourself to learn, and you won't allow yourself to go, actually, no, it's okay to lose from this situation. I'm still not that good. I need to improve. And yeah, it's similar to kind of like this whole designated winner, is that this whole training model of start, early and work up, is you just need, I'm always going to win. I have the safety that I'm going to win in this spar. But I need increased resistance to give me new problems to figure out. Okay, I need you to be the white belt in this. I'm a black belt in this drill. I need you to be a white belt. So it's compliant. I get to feel how my body's supposed to move. Okay, now I need you to be a blue belt. Give me increased resistance. But not enough that I'm going to be scared. Okay, cool. Now I need you to be a purple belt. Now it's increased resistance. Now there's more, it's more dynamic and more variation in what could go wrong than what could go right. And then eventually you build back up to your black belt versus black belt, but I'm still winning. And having that, again, that's, I think, a skill that it engages the uki more, instead of just being essentially a breathing grappling dummy. You have someone that, to be a better partner in this situation, they need to also think, how am I going to make this drill better for my... I could easily go from 0 to 10 and just go, I'm dead, I kill your technique. That's ego again. But go, actually, no, okay, right, I'm going to build this up to level 1 and give you a bit of hand fighting. Okay, now I'm going to go a bit of 2, I'm going to put a bit of a stack in or something like that. I'm going to posture up a little bit more. Now you've got to break me down. And then that builds up their knowledge of how do I kill these techniques? Now, when someone's going for this triangle setup or whatever, I've now got experience in closing it down, because I spent X amount of time being a good partner increasing the resistance for my partner. And that, again, it builds a deeper understanding of jiu-jitsu for that person. Instead of, I'm just going to stand here with my arms out and let you do 10 triangles, and then I'm going to wait for my turn. I'm going to literally go black out with my eyes open and wait for it to be my turn again.
And man, I really think that that one thing could fix this problem in most gyms, and it is reframing what winning is and how much it matters. Because when we are in the gym, for us, our first 40 minutes of training anymore out of our hour class is not performance-based at all. It is totally skill development. It is getting better. Because if you want to be performance-based and you want to win rounds, the best way to do that is to focus on getting better, not to focus on winning. Winning doesn't, just because you win doesn't necessarily mean that you win. You get to win. You win in the gym. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to win in a tournament. You may be fighting a better person or just a person that plays a different game and matches up better to you. It is not the repetitive victory that makes you good. It is that you develop specific skills. And that's what I love about just really being choosy about the training method that you use, is you can kind of say, okay, these are the skills that I need to develop. And you can look at yourself more as a video game character than just a guy who's trying to win every single day, day in, day out, and then basing their view of jiu-jitsu and basing their view of if they want to keep training or not on their performance that day. Oh man, I got beat up by these guys. I suck. I hate this. I'm so frustrated. Instead, you go, man, I focused the first 40 minutes of today on actually getting better at creating angles and using my feet when passing the guard. And that's we talk about that. That's a black belt skill that you can have is being able to walk around the guard, being able to create angles against the guard. And if you start to go, oh, well, I'm getting better at that. When you go to a performance-based game, you're going to be better at passing. But when you just go in and say, I'm going to get good at passing, how I'm going to do that is just to go and try to win rounds. It doesn't work like that. You've got to be able to separate the performance from the actual skill development.
It's kind of weird that you say that. And you can see almost like my eyes lighting up as you're saying it. Is I think being a black belt makes it easier in a way that not necessarily being good, but not caring if you're good. In that, I remember there was the second I got my black belt from Pre, and it kind of happened a bit when I got my brown belt as well, is that I didn't care if I lost anymore. And like, I've already got my recognition. I know I'm good. I've got a black belt. I don't care if a white belt submits me now. And this is one of the things that, there's quite a few quotes you'll see on social media from like some of Danaher's guys like Danaher or Gordon or Gary saying, or if you don't tap out, if you're not tapping out at least 10 times in a training session, you're not learning. Like, I think that was one of the quotes from Gary, or like there was that recent case where Gordon got choked unconscious by that purple belt.
Uh-huh.
And to the majority of us, oh my God, does that mean that purple belt was better than Gordon? Like, no, Gordon is allowing himself to be put into bad situations to figure his way out. But Gordon is confident because he's a very accomplished black belt that he can put himself in these bad places. And that's one of the things I didn't get until I was a black belt. That up until then, like the belt color mattered. Like, I needed to prove myself. Like, I am good. I'll prove I'm even getting better. But the second I got it, I'm like, you know what? I don't care if I get subbed by a blue belt. Like, cool. Like, I'm learning. And this is one of the weird problems that Preet gets quite a lot. Preet Mickelson, the person I got my black belt from, is that he's really leaning into his defensive jiu-jitsu and just surviving everything. But people will watch him roll and go, well, he doesn't even try and win. He's not trying to. No, he doesn't care if you're a blue belt trying to choke him. Like, he's trying to figure out how to get better at jiu-jitsu. Like when I was talking about earlier about, if I've got a new technique, starting with my white belts and working up to my black belts, I didn't necessarily say it was an offensive technique. I might just have a new way of surviving in running man, but I'm still not going to go use it against one of my black belts. Like, I want to build my way up. And if I lose against a blue belt, that's fine. There was a gap in my technique. I need to improve it. And I think having the self-assurance of the black belt means I feel confident in that. If I lose, if I do a new way of holding running man or turtle and I suddenly get choked, that's cool. I was learning something and it failed and I got choked. Cool, but I now know more. Could you say you had those same feelings as a purple belt?
I don't think so.
Exactly.
I don't think
Now
so.
you
I think
have.
you're right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And you're also right too. Even back to the first time that you and I ever trained together. Don't know each other very well. We just do. I want to say we did like an hour straight of just hard training. It was really fun. I think we kind of did 2 30-minute rounds, but we both got a submission. Both guys, when you submitted me, I was, oh my gosh, that was awesome. Yeah. Same thing for you. When I submitted you, and it's because I think when you start to get your black belt, you really, and I don't think you notice this at the lower belts, because you get beat up by a black belt, it just feels like you're getting beat up by a black belt. You don't notice the range. But to me, black belt has a wider range of skill than maybe any other belt.
Yeah.
Because I have rolled with black belts in tournaments that I have, and even recently, even as recently as maybe a year and a half ago, I fought a guy named Yago Souza, just incredible black belt. And there was one of the first times I got off the mat and I go, I didn't understand what was happening. It was when he was passing. And of course, that situation changed my passing completely. I've gotten so much better at passing because of that match. But there was this level that I had never, ever experienced. And I had been training jiu-jitsu for 13 and a half years, competing the entire time against anybody I could, competing at black belt for a few years. But I had never experienced a level like that. And to me, it was like, oh, that's out there. I've got to figure this out. And I think for most other people, because you aren't just going, okay, well, now I'm a black belt and I will be this forever. You're worried about, well, I've got to get to my next belt. I've got to get to my next belt. If there is a brown belt out here that's that good at this position, well, I'll never be that good. And it can get really discouraging. But when you realize the range of black belt, like I kind of will explain that there's like another 5 belts at black belt. There's white, blue, purple, brown, and black. And I think the biggest thing that separates the highest level black belt is that they are good. They have skill from basically every layer of jiu-jitsu. To me, if we're starting in a certain position and a black belt is not able to be as good at that position as they are everywhere else, they're probably not what I would consider elite, right? But when you go with a black belt that you go, man, I started on his back, he's just as good. I started in mount, he's just as good. He starts on top, he's just as good. And when you go with somebody like that, you go, oh, this is elite. This is that highest level of jiu-jitsu. And that's kind of like, for me, when I started to experience that and get around black belts that were that good from everywhere, well, you start to realize the only way to develop this is to get reps from everywhere. Yeah. Like, start in those positions, start in those deep positions. You look at, like you said, Gordon getting choked unconscious by a purple belt. Where do you think they started from? They didn't start from the feet and this happened, and if they did, if he did get Gordon's back, I'm sure that it was because he let him, because Gordon is a type of guy that has 50 layers of amazing jiu-jitsu before you would ever get to his back and get that choke in, right? And you have to beat him in all 50 layers to be able to beat him. And so when I'm looking at, training, if you just start to, if you're a purple belt or a blue belt listening to this, you go, okay, well, you guys haven't given me any practical way to deal with this. I really think that the biggest thing is you start to choose one idea, one position at a time, and you focus on the skills that could be developed in that, and then you get as good as you can. You get at least to where you say, I am at least a purple belt in this position, in this or this idea or this whatever, and then you move on to the next thing. And you keep doing jiu-jitsu that way, because well-roundedness is, it may not be as important for competition. There are guys that can have gaping holes in competition, like their retention is so good that if you were good enough to pass them, you immediately get to submit them because they suck at defense from any bottom pin or something like that. They always give up their back. But their retention is so good, you almost never get to test those positions, right? Their guard is just so hard to pass. You're just never able to test those. And there are, of course, guys like that are amazing competitors that get to teach much more expensive seminars than you and I do. But the truth is, when it comes to being a coach, if that is the goal, when it comes to being an instructor even, if if you don't have that depth of knowledge, if you can't say at every layer, if one of my students if I can't say this is how you defend an armbar because I'm so afraid to be put in that situation, I'm so afraid to actually test it, I'm not able to help my students. I really do limit my students. And when you teach that way, whether, your students are always going to do what you do, And so if they see, okay, Josh is afraid to play these certain positions because he's not good at them and he won't develop them. That's like the total opposite of what we're talking about, the total opposite of being able to get good. When you would use cooperative training or when you would use designated winner is when you have certain skills that you're trying to develop so you can become a well-rounded grappler. You can become a true purple belt everywhere,
I think I say that same idea of it's easy to get stuck in this. I mean, again, you were saying that just like if you want to get better at something, like you need to, it was one of those quotes I think from Gordon as well, like you need, if you're comfortable in your defense, you'll be happy in your offense because of what I've got to worry about. But then how do you build that defense is you've got, you don't just suddenly go to your friends and go, oh, can you beat me up, but not as hard like your peers? Because it's fake. It's sweetener. It's like, it's not real. It's aspartame, it's saccharin. But again, how many times as a purple belt or a blue belt would you have let a white belt kick your ass? Like, you wouldn't. And it's, if I had to give some practical information, it's like, to anyone blue belt or purple belt listen to this, is climb out of your asshole. Like that's the best bit of information, like, advice I can give you is climb the fuck out of your asshole. And it's so, especially it's so toxic in the gym as well. It's like, I can remember being a blue belt, I think, oh my God, I just tapped a purple belt. But that again, that's then feeding into that, I'm walking around doing fucking Conor McGregor fucking swagger, thinking I just got a purple belt. It's like, but I've just blocked them from being comfortable in learning defense, like putting themselves in bad positions, because I'm now going to like hold it over them in some way. Mm-hmm. Or like, I know then if I get that purple belt, I'm not going to let that blue belt work on me because, I don't want them to have the swagger afterwards. And there's that jostling is all, constantly between all the belts. And so eventually when you get that kind of recognition of brown or black belt, you're like, you know what? You couldn't take this away from me. Like, I'm here now. And it's, compared to any other belt, when you see two blue belts or two purple belts rolling, it's very heavy. But when you watch two black belts rolling, and it reminded me when you mentioned about us playing, it's play. Mm-hmm. Like, there's neither of us have anything to prove. We want to learn how the other person operates and absorb as much as we can from as much time as we have. And like I said, we rolled for 2 30-minute rounds, and we probably learned so much in that time. I still adopt a lot of the kind of things that assimilated out of that role. But you just don't have that at blue and purple, because again, it's the colored belts give you so much goddamn toxicity. Mm-hmm. That it's easy to write these social media memes of lose more, defend more. If you're not losing 10 times a day, you're not learning. But again, what practical advice could you get out of it? And I don't think it's possible to beat into someone's head enough. Don't be an asshole. Like, say you hear leave your ego at the door. No one's going to leave the ego at the door. Everyone wants to win. That's what makes you want to be better. So it's like, then what, just saying that little buzz phrase is easy, but how do we then change the mindset in the gym and don't look at it as sparring is winning, sparring is getting better. What does that entail? And it's so pervasive everywhere, that toxicity. Like I say, I get it a lot, is that Preet's known for someone who just lies on the floor and just defends everything, doesn't try and get up. And I was like, he doesn't even try and win, because that's not the purpose. Oh yeah, I saw Preet get choked by a purple belt. Okay. Yeah. Does that matter? Like, what was he doing at the time? Was he trying to win? No, he was using defensive stuff. Okay. Yeah, but then got broken by a purple belt. Yeah, well, that's probably an aspect of his thing that he's still trying to work on. Does that matter? And get behind these toxic little roots over and over and over again. It's like, was that really such a big thing? And it's holding us all back in such a huge way. And I think, it wasn't, I remember being I think I was a purple belt at the time. I was at one of the Globetrotters camps, and I saw 2 black belts who are, good friends of mine, Daniel and Christian Rolling. And just the smile on their face and how they went at each other wasn't like anything I'd ever seen. You see 2 purple belts or blue belts, it was like clash, like die. And you watch these 2 guys, they're smiling, they're giving up position, they're jostling. It's like watching 2 monkeys play. And you think that just does not happen any other time in your jiu-jitsu career. And kind of going full circle into this and that, changing the jiu-jitsu mindset. The coach creates the atmosphere. Like, you are the director of the gym. Like, if you're a douche, the gym's a douche. Like, say your students are a reflection of you in a way. And if you're someone who creates that kind of horrible, toxic gym atmosphere, you're going to have toxic gym students. But if you're someone who can allow for play, allow for loss, allow for this idea of growth through training with lower people and allowing them to win and figuring stuff out, this whole designated winner. And I say, even with a designated winner, you're not winning. Mm-hmm. You're someone who is allowed to play their technique, and that could be a losing technique. It could be I'm in a bad place technique. Like, I need you to be in side control, kicking my ass, because I'm not winning. I'm just getting out of this situation, but I'm going to lose probably a bunch of times to it. Mm-hmm. That's something that we're gifted with, and we've both realized that, oh, right, we need to create this for our students. And how do we do that? And I think it's weird, we don't wear belts in the gym. I had a guy contact me recently. He was traveling through and said, oh, I've forgot my belt. Have you got a belt I can wear? I'm like, why? Does your pants fall down? Like, I don't get it. Like, why do you need one? Like, we don't care. Like, it was funny. I remember giving one of my brown belts once a belt, and she didn't know how to tie it because she'd worn a belt so few times. For a brown belt not knowing how to tie a belt. And I'm like, yeah, good. Like, it shouldn't matter. And I think the second you bring those into the gym, it goes so wrong. We need to figure a better way out.
I think that for so much of it, it has to do with not putting your value of yourself in your jiu-jitsu performance that day. And so many people do this. They put so much in, and I'm sure that I do it too. Yeah, I'm sure that I have done it for a long time, but like, you want to get out of that habit, compete at adult black belt. You will fight guys that are you'll fight guys that man, I understand what's happening way more than this guy, but I can't do anything about it. He is just superior in this role today. I'm not going to be able to beat this guy. And that is going to, that will make you so much more humble, but it will also make you so much more curious if you let it. That was like, while you were talking, I was thinking about this when I had Huron Gracie on the podcast. He had this quote, and I used to always ask the question, how do you suck less at jiu-jitsu? And most everyone would laugh at the answer and give something. And of course, Huron, being Huron, like, looks off into space, suck less at jiu-jitsu. He says, what if when you submit somebody and you're excited because jiu-jitsu works, what if when you get submitted, you're excited that jiu-jitsu works, And he's like, it didn't work for you. It worked against you. Because he goes, if you're then excited, then you can be curious. He goes, because then you could say to yourself, I wonder if I let this guy start to get to that back position again, maybe I'll try to turn a little more. And he said, maybe it doesn't work. And then you're still excited that jiu-jitsu works. And he goes, but maybe you say, what if I use my hands more? And what if I do this? And he goes, you start to be more curious, and you're, quote unquote, you're letting this guy get your back, and you're letting him submit you a bunch. And you're not telling him that. You're not going, hey, you're only hitting these because I'm working back defense. Because again, that's ego, right? You're saying to yourself, okay, well, I'm willing to get choked by this as many times as I can until I don't get choked by this anymore. Because I care more about that. I care more about my own development than I care about winning today. And it's just like anything else. If you're willing to kind of sacrifice a little bit on your diet today, it will pay off so much in the future. If you're willing to sacrifice on your performance and your feeling of accomplishment that you dominated all the people that you dominated today, well, you're going to be able to get better much further in the future because you sacrificed that today. You said, no, I care more about getting better today than anything else. And I think that is, there should just be more value put in that. And I think that you and I aren't speaking in a perspective of, yeah, this is a big problem in our gyms. I think that this is something that you and I would both agree that, like, my students do a really good job of being excited for each other. Of course, they're still competitive. Of course, there are still guys that want to beat other guys in the gym. And when they go and grapple, we all sit on the sideline and watch because we know it's going to be awesome.
This is cool.
Yeah, and so and don't get me wrong, there are days that I will not train with my guys. And I'll sit on the side with maybe some of the parents of some of the teenagers are there, or even some guys that are injured or something like that, are just sitting on the side, and we'll start to make bets on the rounds. There are times that we'll do that. But most of the time, the thought is, hey, we want to be competitors. We want to beat other gyms and win in competition and beat the other schools. And the only way to do that is by growing together, is by all of us, because just like we were talking about, when you and I come in with this brand new idea, we're usually so excited to share it with our students because I go, okay, all these 30 people have a little bit of my brain in them, and have a little bit of my perspective in them at this point. And I know if I bring this new idea to them, they're going to give me so much new stuff. It's almost like 30 of me getting to maybe some that are smarter than me, some that have just different body types than me, but 30 different people all thinking on this same goal. And then, like you and I would do, we would then take that idea, steal it, and then monetize it, exactly. And then, put it on your new BJJ Fanatics instruction.
I think even there's a video from Chris Houter where he says that every good technique was invented by a blue belt, and a black belt stole it and named it. I remember watching that years ago. It made me laugh, and now I've got a complete, again, it's one of those frustrating things. Almost got going full circle back to how we started. Is like, it's easy to be in the dogmatic approach to jiu-jitsu and to step out and go, actually, no, I am not. If anyone ever calls me professor, I'll headbutt them. I'm not. I am just the way I always liken it to is, imagine having a PlayStation and a game of Tekken. I'm just the guy who played Tekken longer, and I'm the guy who knows a few more combos maybe on Tekken, but. It's easy for me to then, we're all in this room just sharing the PlayStation, just trying to get better at Tekken, and I just play Tekken longer. Mm-hmm. Like, if I got some ideas on Tekken, on this, cool, I'll tell you. But other than that, we're just playing a game of Tekken. If you know some stuff about this game that I don't, that's awesome too. And we're all here just playing for the PlayStation together. Like, we're not in competition with each other or anything like that. It's a team effort. We're just trying to get better. And I was just here longer than you were. I'm not, suddenly becoming, you don't have to call me sensei or professor or anything like that. God, no, please. I'm just a dude who played this longer. I got here earlier.
So some of my students think it's funny to call me sensei. I have a decent group of students that just think it's the most hilarious thing in the world to call me sensei, because I just they say it, I just roll my eyes or I don't respond. But then what's really funny is I have a student that calls me sensei and he calls my dad grand sensei. And so that's the new professor, in Granite City Jiu Jitsu. That's the professor is grand sensei. That's what everyone's working towards. One day they'll be the grand sensei of the gym.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to create that toxic environment as a coach, and it's so easy to then, like I say, go back into how it's always been. I mean, we said it over the table earlier. I think this is like a microcosm of it. Is that I don't teach guard anymore. For the first, I'm probably going to step into the point where I probably don't teach it for the first 6 months of someone's career. And the amount of pushback, and I've said this to other people, is like, well, what do you teach them instead? Like, you need to teach them guard. They'll need it eventually. Yeah, they probably will. But I don't need it. They probably won't need it for a while. And so we're not going to talk about it. We'll do other things that, take a lot less coordination and function and go give them a lot more benefit out the other end. When we get to it, when we need it, sure, we'll talk about it. But right now, and it's that instant kind of like, oh, then what do you do instead? Like, exactly. that's the problem. Like, how do we change things, not just like superficially, but fundamentally, like rewire everything. Like this whole idea of belts don't matter. Yeah, they do, but we're trying to make it so it doesn't anymore. That takes a fundamental change. This idea that, yeah, you can be a purple belt losing to a white belt. What do you mean? Like, superficially you can say it, but how do you fundamentally change it? Like, what do you put in its stead then? And that creates this new environment. And those are, I think, the bigger the puzzles that we and, you and I and any other coach that cares has to now solve. Like, how do we do this differently? Do it, something that will shock people, that will even allowing this idea to enter our heads. What are we going to do instead?
I think that right there is where I want to put a pin in on this episode, because I think that it's an episode in itself, and I think we could really dive deep. So before we end this one, though, you have a new instructional you're about to go record at BJJ Fanatics. First off, if somebody doesn't have how to defend everything at BJJ Fanatics, they absolutely need it. Absolutely. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no. And this is probably going to tank my sales if a lot of people hear this. Is that a lot of
Don't worry, no one listens to this show. You're fine. You don't have any.
I heard you're huge.
It's just me and you, man.
Yeah, it's just like, the only view you have is me rewatching it. No, I'd say obviously there's a lot of really good ideas in there, and because I thought I'd only have one shot at Fanatics, I put everything into one video, which has made the second one really difficult to write for. But I'm doing two. Yeah, I'm doing my own second one, which weirdly enough, like the conversation we had earlier is completely. I've got all these notes that I've written down, and suddenly gone, shit. I need to redo these notes because Josh has changed them already. And then I'm doing a third one with Charles Harriet, who was here on the last trip we came through in Granite.
And was on the last podcast we did too.
Yes. His smoothness of technique is much superior to mine, and so he makes everything look good. And I don't think he realized that how important the elbow framing that he did on the last tour was to completely it broke everything I knew about jiu-jitsu. And so I'm so excited to do this video with him of, if I can, he's going to show that pretty much the exact same thing, this elbow frame and this, I call it Kindle guard. He doesn't like it. He wants to call it skeleton guard. I think, what do you think? Kindle or skeleton?
So give me the reason behind Kindle and give me the reason behind skeleton.
So he wants to call it skeleton because like you are creating a frame with your skeleton, that your skeleton is supporting the weight. I call it Kindle because when your elbows out, it looks like you're reading the Kindle. And so,
man, I like Kindle guard. I think
it rolls off way better. Skeleton, it's too many syllables. Like Kindle, sounds nice. But he won't take it. So, but in my world, it'll forever be Kindle guard.
I like that.
Which is a lot sadder, I think. But so we're doing Kindle guard. It'll be called something else entirely, I'm sure, by the time it comes out. And he's going to show the ins and outs of the technique and its strengths. And I'm going to hopefully explain why it was such a fundamentally game. It's easy to buzzword the word, game changing. But this rewrote everything I understood about jiu-jitsu. Like it's been as big a change for me in my jiu-jitsu as learning defensive postures for the first time. So I think, learning that I could just keep my elbows tight was obviously huge. And then to have something that is even bigger, and don't think he even realized how big it was when we did this seminar tour. Like he was showing this elbow frame and these sweeps and these leg lock entries. I'm like, and I didn't really appreciate it until maybe a couple months afterwards. And I was like, oh, good God, this undoes everything. And so hopefully my second DVD will talk a little bit about that and maybe different training models. But the third one is, I'm so goddamn excited. Oh, you have no idea. Like this thing, I hope it changes the world. I'm so pumped.
I'm excited about it, man. I obviously, usually there's about like a month or two turnaround once you film. Like that, and so I'll make sure to alert the podcast when it comes out. But man, I'm excited about it too.
Yeah, it'll be like, they'll be like almost like they have a chimney outside the gym here. Looks like there's a new pope. There's like smoke coming out the chimney. Like the pod, it's released.
It's released. It's time. It's time. That's perfect. All right, Chris, thank you for coming on the show, man. Here. Always love having you. I know I always get great response when I have you on. And Yeah, thanks for being on, man.
One day you'll come to England.
One day I will.
I'm pretty sure you from how long it's taking, I'm getting the impression you hate my country. So
I didn't want to say that. And it's not that I hate England in particular. It's just I hate any country that's not America. That's like
there's some Canadians right now listening to this, just like highly offended.
Man, the podcast, honestly, it does pretty well in a lot of other countries. And so, not anymore.
That's it. He's ruined it.
Yeah.
One day I'll podcast in England with you. I'll even start a new podcast just so I can say, right, I've got Josh McKinney here.
That sounds like a plan, man. Thanks for being on, Chris.
Pleasure. Thanks, dude.
And that is the episode. Thank you guys for checking this one out. As always, we'll have links for everything that Chris and I talked about that we said we would have links for in the show notes. And if you guys are interested, I'll make sure to link every conversation that I've had with Chris in this episode or in the description of this episode, because he and I have done like 6 or 7 different podcasts together over the last couple of years. And I think that just getting to hear our perspectives shift will be helpful for a lot of people, because I think we've both become better coaches than we were 2 or 3 years ago. And then also see what ideas have stuck and have grown and gotten better too might be helpful for a lot of people. But if you guys enjoyed today's episode, be sure to drop that 5-star review for us. We always want a 5-star review, always trying to grow the podcast in that way. And that is pretty much all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed this interview with Chris Paynes, and I hope today's episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys.